Let's go to Washington and talk to Dr. Webster Griffin Tarpley, author and historian. Welcome to the programme, sir. Doctor, the insurgents, that is the Free Syrian Army, have apparently suffered heavy losses in their fight against Syrian government forces. And now some opposition forces are worried that they are losing ground despite being heavily armed and funded by the West. Just how bad a setback is this for the opposition?
Well, I guess we'll soon see. What we do know is that the casualties among these rebels have been very heavy. One stands out on December 17th. Abu Furat, a rebel leader, was killed near Aleppo. This was a former Syrian army officer who had become a brigadier general for the insurgency. And we've got other reports of as many as 1,000 Pakistani Taliban being killed by the Syrian army. So the presence of the foreign fighters remains the key to this entire military situation. They're the majority of the rebellion. Now, when Assad speaks tomorrow, it's expected he'll say more about a negotiated solution. And I think it's important to realize that the ones blocking the negotiated solution are precisely these rebels. This evening, we have to remember, perhaps here in the West, tomorrow's Epiphany, Monday is the Orthodox Christmas. I'd like to just focus for a second on a smaller group that gets perhaps very little in the way of attention. They're one of the groups that might be crushed in the process. The Syriacs or the Arameans, right? People in the West may realize that this is the group that continues to speak Aramaic, which was the language that Christ and the disciples spoke. So they have a website. What do they say? They want a dialogue among all the groups with no preconditions. Now, that is pretty much the Syrian government position, but not the rebels and not NATO. They want a ceasefire. They want to stop the importation of foreign weapons. That goes against the rebel position on both of those counts. They want an end to economic sanctions. Again, the opposite of what the U.S. and NATO are doing.
Indeed.
And interestingly, they want a stop to the recruitment of foreign fighters and the stopping of the infiltration of the foreign fighters into the country. And that, of course, is the essence of the rebel and NATO position. So here's, I think, a reasonable proposal, and you can see the people that are for it are basically the Syrian government, and the ones against it, the rebels.
Indeed. And very briefly, so, I mean, it's interesting that the US and its allies are not suffering any casualties, but rather it's the Syrians, be it the opposition or government forces here, that are suffering the casualties.
Well, this is Obama leading from behind, right? He doesn't send the U.S. forces, although he has sent the U.S. forces. We now, as of yesterday, we've got, I would say, U.S. combat troops in Turkey. U.S. forces have been in Turkey for a long time, but now they're right up against the border, so we can say Obama has put people in harm's way. That's an act of breathtaking folly, of reckless irresponsibility, but he's done that. And the entire logic of Obama's position, the leading from behind, is that you don't use the official NATO infantry. You use these terrorists. You basically use al-Qaeda as your ground forces and wage irregular warfare. And that has worked in some countries, but in Syria it has not worked, and there's some indication that it will not work.
Right. Dr. Webster Griffin Tarpley, author and historian from Washington, thanks for your thoughts there, sir.